So I mentioned in my last few videos that I've done about the Holocaust that really experimentation is the same thing as research. The reason all the hospitals and all the professional organizations of science, medicine, and nursing hated Trump is because he was going to cut funding. I don't think he was going to cut all of it. He was just going to rein it in because it's been out of control. Again, where are the results of cures? There's not one cure. There isn't. You have a ton of drugs that treat some symptoms. Antibiotics put doctors on put science on the map, but from there, if you want to put technology, we're addicted to our cell phone. Technology is brought some things that have helped, but as far as just medicine, nothing has been no. We have more diseases, more illnesses than ever before, and yet we have all these genome labs going up. So you have to ask yourself, what has the science been doing? Not because they should have a ton of cures by now, and they don't. We have more problems. So this is also back from the Holocaust. Again, experimentation is research. A Jewish prisoner in a special chamber responds to changing air pressure during a high altitude experiment for the benefits of the Luftwaffe conditions simulating those found at 15,000 meters. Which was created in an effort to determine if German pilots might survive at that height. So this is why some people refer to the military-industrial complex as the military-medical-industrial complex, because the two go one and the same. The medicine helps create, if you go to war, we can weaken them this way or use some chemical agent on them, or that's the way they pretty much go hand in hand. And again, when talk about it doesn't mean it's every doctor. The doctors at the bedside and the nurses, they just have been trained to, this is who we follow. That's the reason why all of these associations, they need, if they want to stay in place, fine, they should no longer have a seat at the table. They're unethical in every way. These associations were around before the Holocaust. The Red Cross was I believe it was there was two unions that nurses back in Hitler's days they had to join one or the other to work as a nurse, and one of them was the Red Cross. So either way you were either way you were working for Hitler, because that he controlled the medical system. He was running. Here's what's sick though. Most of the science and the researchers, they're so obsessed with their research, they don't care what they do to people. They're psychopaths. It's sad to say that, but they do. They just become obsessed with doing this, getting money for this. That's how Fauci is. I want money for this. I want money for that. And what we can't do here in America, we'll go to Wuhan and do, or we'll go to Ukraine and do in their lab. And then what happens? Why were they doing gain of function, which is merging animal cells with humans, just so then it releases? That's why we've had avian flu. It's bird flu, okay? We shouldn't, and none of those things that we should have, unless the science is messing around with gain of function, and that's what they've been doing. Yet that's how we get to this place where we have more and more diseases, viruses, and problems, and then you get the most unethical, god-awful people at CDC and HHS thinking they're going to tell you what's best for your health. Yeah, Hitler did it all the time. Look how that turned out. So this is a little bit about Nazi racial theories. The Nazi Party adopted and developed several pseudoscientific racial classifications. Who's using pseudoscience right now? American Nurses Association, American Medical Association, American Hospital Association, HHS, CDC, all of them. Because they to this day are ignoring the frontal lobe. That's a science we know. It's an old science. The frontal lobe is not formed until the early to mid-20s. Why kids aren't just allowed to do whatever they want. But we have an entire medical profession and nursing profession supporting that children should change their genders, and going as far as to want to, in some states, like Newsom's in California, that's the most communist state right now, wanting to take parents' take their kids away from them if they don't affirm them. This is what Hitler did. They would find ways to, because again, it goes back to the Marx agenda. They have to destroy the family. So bring in let's push this on kids, destroy the family, and then if the parents don't go along, we'll take their kids away. Hitler did this same thing. He would take youth away from families. He would find ways to break the family and then take the kid. Why? Because then they can indoctrinate that kid into the Hitler or Nazi or socialism ideology. So pseudoscientific racial classifications as part of its ideology in order to justify the genocide of groups of people which it deemed racially inferior. The Nazis considered the putative Aryan race a superior master race, and they considered black people, mixed race people, Slavs, Roma, Jews, and other ethnicities racially inferior subhumans whose members were only suitable for slave labor and extermination. Yeah. And maybe that's why the science is so arrogant. And just we can always do what we want to do. And that's why they hated Trump, because Trump, again, who has been right about everything he said, people would have, if we would have treated early COVID, that's what we needed to do. But they as long as you have a treatment for something, they can't make a vaccine, and they were hell-bent on the vaccines. Because that's all the science has done. I mean, kids before they're an adolescent are getting 73 injections. Does that seem like science has advanced? No. It seems like they're just feeding you a load of bullshit, but when you really, and they are, because when you look at it, no, we have more diseases, more viruses, more problems, because what the science does with the money they're given is the most god-awful research that ends up being a disaster for everyone. So they shouldn't be trusted anymore. They just shouldn't. Are there ethical scientists out there? I'm sure there is. But they're not heading up any of our agencies or institutions or associations of science, medicine, or nursing. And I might have read this, but it's important to remember this. Scientists helped shape Nazi Germany's racial laws. That's what they're doing now, aren't they? You can say, oh, we don't call them Nazis. No, it's called your far left radical socialist party. So many people might not know about most people know about the Nuremberg trials, okay, that came after, the Holocaust. We don't really fall under that. I don't know if most people know that. We don't. It's sound. I mean, we sort of do. We try to adhere to that. But what happened was, because it was mostly America that they brought these through Operation Paperclip. And I'm going to say again, if you want to think that's a conspiracy theory just because the news didn't tell you, then go on the government websites and look it up yourself. The amount of operations the science and military has done, and done to their own people already, stuff they've never told us about. It's worth you doing your own research and looking into it. It's on the government websites themselves. If you're going to wait for the news to tell you, well, then you'll be waiting till pigs fly. But Operation Paperclip was a real thing. Our military, not our military, the corrupt part of our military, got many of those corrupt scientists out of Germany, out of facing trial, and they came here. And then they did what was known as a doctor's trial. After the war, these crimes were tried at what became known as the doctor's trial, and revulsion at the abuses led to the development of the Nuremberg Code of Medical Ethics. Yes, America was part of the Nuremberg Code, but it was Reiner Flumik. Anybody who watched Reiner Flumik in his Corona committee, he did like 2 years ago, he started doing it, ran for over a year, I think. I would listen to those 5-hour podcasts it was just the history. And he had mentioned a couple times how America doesn't fully fall under, I think it's because we don't fully fall under the International Court, only for certain, I don't know, but he mentioned that. So they did do doctors' trials here. 20 of the 23 defendants were medical doctors and were accused of having been involved in Nazi human experimentation and mass murder under the guise of euthanasia. The indictment was filed on October 25th, 1946, and some of them received the death penalty. It's worth remembering. This is why remembering and recognizing history repeating is important.